How do you deconstruct your religion without losing your soul? Hey guys, it's John sitting here in my living room drinking a magnificent glass of water. When I first had my experiences of people telling me about my past life and then having the regression and remembering it, I went through a very interesting struggle because everything that I was experiencing was against my faith, my faith that I grew up in. By the time this happened, I had studied all over and studied all kinds of different spirituality because my mother let me go free of being stuck in Catholicism. She said, go find what you believe. Spirituality is a personal journey. And I had to figure out how to believe. I discovered very quickly that there's an emotional weight to questioning your beliefs because you've been told to believe it. You're in the habit of believing it usually from childhood. You're usually taught to think that way, and in thinking that way, you create an identity that means this is the way the world works, and I have to come to a place of understanding. You know, when when you start to deconstruct it, it's usually because of the fact that you have run into something that doesn't feel right to you, something that doesn't feel authentic to you. Or if God is love, then the judgment and the anger and the vitriol can't be of God, right? You start to find these elements. You start to see from the Bible, you start reading stories in the Bible that don't match that doctrine of God being love. And you start to question everything that you've been thinking. What is the definition of deconstructing? Deconstructing is a reexamination. It's a looking at what you've been believing and discovering if it's true. Oftentimes in this world, we're told a lot of things and we drop into camps of belief. And when we discover that the camp of belief that we're in is not in alignment with our own habits or morals or ideas, then we have a struggle. We have to re-examine what it is we're living and believing. You also find that this happens in all aspects of life. Sometimes you have to re-examine friendships when you discover the person isn't as loving or caring as they thought they were. Or sometimes you may have re-examined friendships and discover that this person is more than just a friend. It's somebody greater, somebody who is more impactful in your life, someone who could be a romantic interest. You re-examine things. We are constantly re-examining things. The reason we struggle with deconstructing religion or re-examining religion is because we're told if we re-examine it all, we're bad. That you're going to burn in hell if you question. And that's the thing you need to re-examine. If there's a threat for even asking a question, then that's something to re-examine. Because if God is love, would God threaten you or scare you or tell you you're going to burn in hell? So that's the process. So how do you deconstruct or re-examine without losing your soul? The first thing you have to do is re-examine what your definition of soul is. In Christianity, a soul is something within inside of you. It's something separate from you. It really is. It's something that is not you, but greater you. Okay, so now that's a definition. But let's look at the idea of in modern ideas, you have the higher self. Well, is that your soul? You have the Holy Spirit. Is that your soul? That re-examination brings us to a lot of crossroads. Which crossroad do we take? Well, if the soul is within you, then it's part of you. It's who you are. It's that higher self. It's an easier definition. But you will lose your immortal soul is to say that you have something inside you that you need or addicted to, and that if you question or you try to go against or deconstruct, you will lose that soul. The reality of it is that when we look at this ideology, it's just another threat. It's another fear-based doctrine that says you're going to lose your soul. You're not going to be a part of God anymore. Well, the question is, which God are you following? The Old Testament says God is vengeful and jealous, and the New Testament says God is love. Which one are you following? If you're afraid to deconstruct and you think that's okay to be afraid to deconstruct, then you're following the Old Testament God. If you're believing in love and compassion, you're believing this, like the story of the Good Samaritan who literally picked up a man who had been robbed and beaten, took him to an inn, paid the innkeeper money, and said, "When I come back," he said, "take care of him. When I come back, I'll pay what else you're owed." And did. Now, at that time period, the Samaritan and the Jew were enemies. They didn't have a relationship, and yet the Samaritan saw this man as a man and did a loving gesture. Right? He wasn't falling into the societal norms that says let that Jew rot on the street. He said, no, this is a human, and he picked him up and took him where everybody else left him lying on the side of the road. Everybody else. The supposed societal mortal enemy of the Jews picks him up and takes him and pays for him to take care of him. If that's the God that you follow, then you have to realize you can't take the societal norms. You can't follow the ideologies of the religion that are telling you to be fearful of losing your soul, because that would be unloving, that would be uncaring, that would be against the New Testament God of love. And so you've got to have this idea of, which God am I following? Am I following the Old Testament God or the New Testament God? If you're following the New Testament God, then in the stories of Joshua in the New Testament, the people ask him, what's the greatest law? And he literally says that the greatest law is to love God and love your neighbors as yourself, right? Now, love God, right? In other words, love, be part of love, be an expression of love. Love God. God is love. So love, and then treat others as you would want to be treated. Be kind, be considerate, be loving. And what was the last commandment? I leave you one commandment: love one another. He didn't say leave you one commandment: love one another if they're Christian and they believe like you do. It doesn't say any of that. So in deconstructing, you start to have a broader view of the world. You start to see the world as just all of us together, and treating people for who they are and how they are, and helping them in that process. So in deconstructing faith, you're not losing your soul. You're gaining a greater awareness of the oneness of your soul. You're coming to a place of understanding that your soul is greater than this small lane of one faith. You come to find out that love is not limited by boundaries of doctrine. Love is not limited by boundaries of dogma. Love is unlimited. In deconstructing, you'll often find that you'll fall into guilt and shame. Well, why are you falling into guilt and shame? The reason you fall into guilt and shame when you deconstruct is because the religion told you you'd be guilty and you'd be shameful if you did not believe what they say. That is the growing pains of breaking free of a doctrine or a dogma that is more cult-like than love.
And now, a quick word from our sponsor. Coffee Time with John. This channel runs off coffee, so get your coffee and tea at johnsjoe.com.
Another thing is, when you start to deconstruct your religion, you find out very quickly that you start to lose community. People who don't believe the same as you will start to separate themselves from you. You no longer go to the churches, and so you no longer have that community. There are more people in the world who think like I do than you can possibly imagine. 30% of the world are Christian. The other 70% aren't. And when you look at it from that perspective, you realize when you're out walking through your life and you're bumping into people, 70% of the people you're bumping into aren't Christian. 70%. Now, of course, when you're in your pocket of the world, like in the Bible Belt, you may run into more Christians in that area. But you go anywhere else in the world, 70% of who you're talking to are not Christian. But did the conversation ever come up? Did the idea that, hey, I'm going to talk to you, but only if you're Christian, ever come up? No. You were just being with other people. The concept of religion never came up because that's who you are naturally, to be out there in the world with the other 70% of the world who aren't Christian. And you start to realize that if that's true, and I've had wonderful conversations with lots of different people that I never knew what their religion was, then you realize that you yourself are not limited by religion or doctrines or dogmas. And when those religions, doctrines, or dogmas tell you to think the other people are going to burn in hell for not thinking the same as you do, then you realize that you already are deconstructing. You're already naturally deconstructing your religion because it is literally a breaking free of that doctrine and dogma. That community idea of losing your community, you can go online right now and find communities. You can find groups that talk about spirituality from a non-religious perspective. You can, if you still want to follow some of the teachings of Jesus or Jeshua, look into unity churches where they not only come from the base of the Jesus teachings, but come from the base of allowing the Buddhist monks to come in and do things, and Hindus. And I have spoken at unity churches multiple times. I have spoken at unity churches. And in speaking at unity churches, we find this beautiful community. Now, what's interesting about that beautiful community is on Sundays, they have their service. After that service, there's a community room. They all go to the community room, have coffee and cake, and they talk and they meet people, and they have a new and more open community because now they're talking about everything. They're talking about all spirituality. They're talking about and they're leaving spirituality out of the conversation too. They're talking about their lives and sharing and loving one another from a very simple perspective of this is just my community. You can find community. You can find community out there. There's metaphysical centers you can go to. If you want to go off the deep end, right near here, there's a place called Merging Hearts. You can go down and check out Merging Hearts and have their experience. I would say don't believe there's not a community for you out there, because there is. There's communities all over the place. I know people who have groups that meet with people of all religions. They don't care about the religions. They're just exploring various spiritualities. And that's a beautiful place to be. Once you start to deconstruct your religion, you're going to find this newfound freedom, because when you're in the limitations of a doctrine, you don't see outside of that doctrine because you're not allowed to. Once you start going, okay, what are they believing? What are they thinking? Does this ring true to me? You'll suddenly find this freedom. Now, you'll also find that if you start looking at all of these other religions, you're going to find that there's a lot of commonalities. They all talk about loving one another. They all talk about kindness. They all talk about treating people like you'd like to be treated. They all talk about that thing. That last one, treating people like you'd be treated, it's so common they gave it its own name. It's called the Golden Rule. Treat others as you like to be treated. That idea of living into a broader perspective gives you the relief. I don't have to be afraid of hell. I don't have to be afraid of the devil. These concepts, hell, the devil, they're not in the original text of the Bible. They are theologians' additions later, and then reinterpretations in the Middle Ages. And so they're not even in the original text. The original text comes from Judaism. Judaism doesn't have a hell. It has a Sheol, a place where dead people go, but there's no idea of punishment or devils or demons or any of that stuff in there. That is a later theologian's addition. And when you look at it from that perspective, you realize that, well, if Christianity is coming out of Judaism, and Jesus is supposed to be the fulfillment of Judaism, and Judaism says there is no hell or damnation, then you have to realize that is a construct of doctrine that's been thrown upon you. So how do you navigate through the fear of losing yourself, losing your identity, losing your religion? The first thing you have to do is realize what fear is. Fear in the present moment is only an emotional reaction, but it's an emotional reaction to past experiences with an expectation that something negative might happen in the future. But what are those past experiences? In the deconstructing Christian's belief, It's the dogma. It's the doctrines. They've given you the belief and the experience that if you do this, you're going to be bad. And so the fear is just an illusion that something may happen from these two time frames, but you never have been able to do anything in the past or anything in the future. You have always remained in your present moment. You can't go to the store next Thursday right now. You can only go to the store right now. The idea of this concept is the idea that in this moment, you are living the only moment you ever live. Right here, right now, the experiences of life are coming to you. And that's true because we know you've never left your present moment. All the experiences you've had in life have happened in your present moment, and they became your memories of present moments, which is your past. The future was just a place where you set goals for your next present moment, but you never got to it. It always happened here. It always happened in your present conscious moment. Bible says, whatever you ask in God's name is granted. God's name, according to Moses, is I am. God's name, according to Moses, is I am. And when you look at it from that perspective, I am is a present moment declaration. Amen means so be it. It means right here, right now, it's done. So that being said, fear can only be addressed in the present moment, and the only thing you have to address in the present moment is the emotional reaction to fear. The way you're reacting. Now, we have the primal fight or flight response. We suck air into our lungs, we hold it. That is the physical reaction to fear. That is the reaction. Our body goes into a survival mode. We need air so that we can get away if we need to. That's why we suck air into our lungs. Every parent who saw their kid do something dangerous went and sucked air into their lungs. Why? To have a reserve to be able to run to them or run away. Either way. It comes down to this concept of here and the now, you have the ability to release that fear. Getting out of Christianity for just a second, Buddha says the secret to enlightenment is the eradication of fear. The Sufis say God's on one side of a veil and we're on the other side of the veil. Our life is a struggle against the veil, and the veil is our own fear. Struggle is subjective. Bible says, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil. So I've just given you 3 different religious interpretations of the eradication of fear and taking fear out of your illusion. But it always comes back to that one moment where you go and let the air out and relax. Tell your physical body you're safe. Your cognitive reasoning kicks right back in. That's why actors, when they forget their lines, are trained to exhale and relax their muscles. All their lines come right back to their heads because they shut off the survival mechanism and turn their cognitive reasoning back on. And that's the important part of this. When you decide to deconstruct your religion, it always starts with a doubt. You're doubting what they're saying. You're doubting that idea is true for you. You're doubting that idea, and that doubt is curiosity. It's not danger, it's curiosity. Well, why do I believe that? What is this belief? How does that belief make me feel? And you start to have a curiosity. The danger part of that is not your own peril. It's what the doctrines have told you your peril is. And the reason they give you that is because of the fear response. Religions have been very good at using fear to manipulate. In 1830, John Nelson Darby invented the rapture. It's not in the Bible. It's not anywhere in the Bible. And in that invention, he created one of the greatest fear-based tools, leaving Christianity, is like telling the world that you're not going to be raptured, right? And the idea of the rapture was just a tool used to say, look, you have to be one of the 144,000. Now, what's interesting about that is when John Nelson Darby was creating the rapture, he took the number 144,000 from Revelations, but he didn't take the rest of the sentence. For those of you who are really excited about being raptured, if you're a virgin, that's one of the criteria. You have to be a virgin to be raptured. You also have to be male. 144,000 male virgins will be raptured. Nobody else. That's what the book of Revelation said. John Nelson Darby took that part of it out because it would not fit the narrative of everybody being afraid of not being raptured. So when you look at it from that perspective, it's like, I personally don't want to be raptured because I don't want to be in a room with a bunch of virgin men. I want to have love and compassion for all people. The other thing is, when you are deconstructing your religion, you're going to find that worthiness issues will come up, because the number one tool of Christian doctrine to keep people in the faith is to tell them they're unworthy. You're born in sin. You're a sinner. Amazing Grace says you're a wretch. All these things are all about keeping you not worthy. They give you a series of quotes all throughout the text saying, you are less than God. You are unworthy of God. You are unworthy. Deconstructing is detaching self-worth from your religion, because the religion has told you that you're not worthy. If you believe you're part of God, then ask yourself this question: what part of God is not worthy? You're going to find very quickly that no part of God is not worthy, and you are part of God. The Father and I are one, and you must become one with me as I am with the Father. That's a statement of oneness with God. And staying in that oneness with God means that you're worthy. And so remember, that self-worth is just a push to keep you fearful, to keep you in a religion. But in reality, ye are gods, as the Bible says. Greater works than I've done, you will do. That is the beauty of this. Think of the ravens; they neither reap nor sow, yet they are provided for. Yet how much more worthy are you? It really comes down to saying that even the Bible says these beautiful statements, but it's the theologians' doctrines of fear and dogma and attachment to threats that keep you in this place, and makes deconstructing a religion hard, because you've got to overcome those fears. Exhale. You'll be able to release that much quicker. The concept of leaving religion is uncomfortable for a lot of people, and the reason it's uncomfortable is because they're so used to the idea that they are in a framework that they can manage and comprehend. And in reality, the framework is like a velvet cage. You're in that cage, you're comfortable in the cage because you know the parameters. But the reality is, you can open the door and fly. You can open the door and fly at any given moment. It always comes down to you deciding that there's a broader world out there beyond this cage. And the religion is the cage. And the velvet is the chosen comfort you've decided to have within that religion. And you can break free and fly out and experience the more expansive God, the more loving God. That's found in all religions. But you're also going to find fear and doctrines and dogmas in all religions, because all the fears, doctrines, and dogmas come from the mind of man. I find it really interesting that religions are based around somebody else's inner experience. Jesus' inner experience, Buddha's inner experience, Krishna's inner experience, Muhammad's inner experience, Baha'u'llah's inner experience, Swaminarayan's inner experience. They all had this inner experience, and they shared their inner experience, and then everyone started deifying them instead of taking their lessons and learning an inner experience, having an inner experience. That idea of recognize that you are divine already, and coming from that place where you've been told you're not divine and unworthy, it's uncomfortable, because we have to break past the fear of being a little ant being squashed by something bigger. And we're not little ants. We're one with God. We're infinite. There is no beginning and end. I am the Alpha, the Omega. So are you. And that was the teachings of Jeshua himself. Remember that amen means so be it. It means right here, right now, it's done. I am is right here. It's not I will be or I was. Everything in spirituality is present moment. And the more you come to that space of realizing in your present moment, you can create a beautiful world around you without fear and anxiety and stresses of religion, that makes the deconstructing much easier. Follow love. If you're being loving, you are delivering God. If people are loving you, they're delivering God to you. If you are caring for the people around you, if you are watering your plants, you're delivering love. Choose love over fear. Let fear drift away like a leaf on a river going away from your boat, further and further away. And when those who want to come up against you for your changing beliefs, understand that they're still in the cage. They're still in their velvet cage. And don't get mad at them. Don't get frustrated that they don't understand. That's their journey, not yours. Your journey is your own. So take your journey and let them have their journey, but don't hate them or despise them for trying to sway you to their journey. Just understand that that's their fear and their anxiety, and they're trying to push. And probably them trying to sway you back to their journey is probably their way of loving you and not understanding. They're using fear to get you back to a place where they feel safe about you. Remember to be kind to yourself during this process. Oftentimes with our doubts and our struggles, we start beating ourselves. Oh, why did I do that? And they start having all that sort of situation. You don't want to come to a place of beating yourself up. If you're part of God, what part of God do you want to chastise? Let go of the idea of needing to beat yourself up for changing, because that's just going to make your struggle even longer. Understand that religions have been trying to figure out the universe since the beginning. And none of them actually know how the world began. None of them actually know. Understand that it's okay not to know. Understand that in this moment, it's okay to just be loving and just be caring. You don't have to try to push somebody into a belief that none of the religions know. The idea that, Adam and Eve were the first man and woman on the world, and yet they had children, and those children had wives. Where did the wives come from? Now, Christian apologists will tell you that Adam and Eve had more children, and the other children were their wives. So Christianity is about incest. So it makes no sense. Genetically, if that was the case, the human race would have diminished a long time ago, because we know what happens when inbreeding happens. We see it in nature. So that said, we don't know how it all began, and we don't need to know how it all began. We don't have to know everything. But if you just come back to being loving, you're going to find a broader awareness of the world. And when you find that broader awareness of the world, you're going to realize your love doesn't stop at religion's edge. Your love is ongoing and permeates everything if you choose to be in that loving place. My friends, during this time of deconstruction, you're not lost. You're growing. You're finding a bigger awareness of God's beauty. God is too big and beautiful to be encompassed by any one school of thought or religion. And in deconstructing, you're going to not be diminishing something. You're going to be expanding the awareness of God and the awareness of love in the world. You're going to come to a place of realizing that your ability to just simply be loving is spirituality. The non-corporeal is spirituality. The doctrines and dogmas are of the mind of man. And the doctrines of dogmas of Christianity especially are based in fear-based teachings. And they've adapted and morphed over the years. That's why we ended up with the rapture. The Trinity, which is a beautiful idea, is from the 4th century. The ideologies of hell and all of its 9 levels and all that comes from the 1300s with Dante's Inferno. As you start to deconstruct, you're going to start to find that these are just ideas of man trying to create a framework or a cage around God. God is beyond the cage, but if you put yourself in that cage, you're not going to see the full awareness of God. And so you just exhale. Release the fears and anxieties, open the cage door, jump and fly. Experience the vastness of the infinite. You can do this, and it doesn't have to be fearful. And I will tell you, the more you do this, the more loving and caring you'll feel, and the more loving and caring your world around you will be. You'll start to see a broader perspective of beautiful people that aren't Christian, that aren't, and you'll start to realize there's beautiful Christians, there's beautiful Muslims, there's beautiful people, and those beautiful people are the larger expression of a more beautiful God. Peace is not in the answers. Peace is in the feelings that you feel and you deliver. Those feelings and choosing to deliver the feeling of love will bring love back to you. And that's the greatest thing you can learn from deconstruction, is that God is not a doctrine or dogma. God is a beautiful expression into the world. And you can be that expression and live that expression. And that's my thought on this. You guys have a great day. And I'll talk to you soon. See ya. Bye.